My name is Fatma Ahmed Z. I am working as lecturer botany at Government Girls Degree College, Quarry Road, Quetta. The subject which I am teaching in this semester is biodiversity and its conservation. So today I am going to discuss the topic of biodiversity hotspots. The areas serving as the richest spot for biodiversity location are termed as biodiversity hotspots. So this is simple definition of biodiversity hotspots, that they are the richest spots for biodiversity location, and this is termed as biodiversity hotspots. But if we study it further, we come to know that these areas have rich biodiversity of endemic species which are under the threats of human activities. So those areas which are under the threats of human activities and those areas have rich biodiversity of endemic species are called biodiversity hotspots. The concept of biodiversity hotspots was given by Sir Norman Mears in the year 1988. So this is the name of the person who introduced this terminology of biodiversity hotspots in biodiversity and its conservation. Now, for any area to be considered as a biodiversity hotspot, it must meet the following two criteria. So these are the two criteria which are must for any area to be in the list of biodiversity hotspots. So these two criteria are: the area should have at least 1500 vascular species of plants which must be endemic. So 1500 species of plants would be vascular and they should be endemic species. The area must be in the threatened list of IUCN, which means that it should have left with 30% or less of its natural vegetation. It means that 70% vegetation in that area is completely destroyed and it is left with only 30% or less of its natural vegetation. Now, what is the number of biodiversity hotspots in the world? It is 34. There are a total of 34 biodiversity hotspots in the world. Now, what are endemic species? Endemic species are those species which are confined to a specific area, which means that they are found in only that specific area. So this topic, which is identification of biodiversity hotspots in Musakhil district of Balochistan, comes under the topic of biodiversity hotspots of Balochistan, which was presented by my students. So I have selected a few slides for you so that you can study them. First of all, I will discuss the project introduction. The project identification of biodiversity hotspots in Musakhil district was designed to assess the status of biodiversity under the following objectives. So these are the objectives of the project. The number one is identify threats to biodiversity, in which they have identified the threats to biodiversity. Identify solution to minimize the impacts. They have identified solutions to minimize the impacts, and now these are the impacts of the human activities which cause threats to biodiversity. Prepare documentation of resources database, that they have prepared a documentation of resources which can be helpful in the identification of solutions to minimize the impacts which are caused by the activities of humans which cause threats to biodiversity. Prepare guidelines for communities to improve the socio-economic condition of the district. So these are the objectives of the project, which are to identify threats to biodiversity, to identify the solutions which can minimize the impacts of activities caused by humans which cause threats to biodiversity, to prepare documentation of resources which can be helpful in minimizing the impacts, and to prepare guidelines for communities so that the communities can improve the socio-economic condition of Musa Khel district. Now the other important thing is for the identification and assessment of biodiversity situation in Musa Khel district, study was carried out based on review of secondary data and data collection in the physical environmental features. So all this study was dependent on secondary data and data collection in the physical environmental features such as topography, soil, geology, climate and water, and biological characteristics such as ecology, flora and fauna, and socio-economic conditions and their analysis. So this is also a very relevant point, so you have to study it. I will discuss the results of the study of which was performed in this project and their significance, which is their importance. District Musa Khel is rich in flora and faunal diversity, that it has a good flora and fauna, so it comes in the category of biodiversity hotspots of Balochistan. However, unsustainable utilization of these natural resources resulted in their extreme decline. This means that unsustainable utilization of resources in this area has destroyed the flora and fauna of the respective hotspot. The excessive use of these natural resources by the community has caused deforestation, habitat destruction, overgrazing, illegal hunting and depletion of population of wild species and cutting of vegetation. So these are the impacts caused by human activities which resulted in the destruction of biodiversity of Musa Khel district. Some species are endangered and others have been reduced to small and scattered populations. So some species have become endangered and others have been reduced to small and scattered populations. Remote areas of northern Balochistan are mostly owned by the local communities. These remote areas are still important refuge for a number of wild species. So here this idea has been given that it is very important to educate the local communities not to destroy the flora and fauna of that respective area, as due to these activities it has become a hot spot and is listed in the category of IUCN hotspots among other hotspots of the world. Now I'll discuss the summary of the project. So Musa Khel is one of the most diverse districts in the province and aesthetically and ecologically provides unique habitat. It is a home of hundreds of species of plants and animals, many of which are found nowhere else in the whole province. Means they are endemic species. The climate is arid and subtropical and mostly receives monsoon shower during summer. The natural vegetation of the area consists of subtropical thorn forest. Survey for the identification of biodiversity hotspots of Musa Khel district was carried out during the year 2005. So this is a research paper of 2005. The area has many species and habitats of global biodiversity significance. So the flora and fauna of the district of Musa Khel plays an important role in global biodiversity and it has a global biodiversity significance. So that's all, and you have to prepare these slides for the topic of biodiversity hotspots of Balochistan. First you will discuss the project introduction, in which you will discuss the objectives of the project. Then you will discuss this slide, which includes the identification and assessment of biodiversity situation in Musakhel district, which was dependent upon secondary data and data collection in the physical, environmental features, biological characteristics and socio-economic conditions. Then you have to discuss the result and their significance, means the result and their importance of the project. Then you have to discuss the summary of the project, and that's it. You can write it properly in your own words, right? And you also have to study the slide which I had prepared and which I've included in the introduction, right? Thank you so much.